Our next contest of the Better Photography Weekly Challenge is Tinge of Red. Our judge and mentor is Abhishek Scariya. His passion lies in documentary, editorial, and travel photography, especially in the area of human interest and social and cultural issues. He has worked on projects of global importance from Nepal to New York and has exhibited his work worldwide. He has been a guest speaker at the Brehm Center, California for Adobe India and also consults in lesson development and design for K-12 school students in the USA. In 2018, Abhishek became an official Fuji X photographer and brand ambassador for Fujifilm. Some of Abhishek's accolades include the Better Photography Wedding Photographer of the Year Awards and Manuel Rivera or its Foundation for International Photography Hall of Excellence. Hello and welcome.
Thank you, Nilofer. Thank you for having me. Thank you. I'll just share my screen. And as you do that, I was thinking about the whole theme, a tinge of red. Why a tinge of red, right? Now, of course, red is like a common color, and there is a lot that's already said about red. So I don't want to repeat anything, but then what is unique about the whole color, right? And it is one of my favorite colors. And I was thinking, how is it that we can understand this whole process better? Is there anything in red that can keep our attention, or is there anything that that speaks to us when we think about red? So okay, now what we should keep in mind, and this is quite obvious, right? The color red doesn't leave the viewer in a neutral posture. It always invokes emotions, and it demands attention. You're not, you never see something which is red and then just kind of go through. Either you like it or you hate it, or it makes you think. It kind of invokes something in you. It demands attention. This is one picture that that I shot a few years ago at the Kochi Biennale. So this was actually an art piece, and this is a guest coming to see the art piece. And one way to actually deconstruct what colors do in a picture would be to imagine that picture without that color. Now, if I were to imagine this lady wearing a gray top, I don't think this picture would be as strong as it is. So now what the red is doing is that, in spite of all the complicated elements in the picture, in spite of all the frames in the wall, it demands our attention. So then the photographer ought to think, how can red be used so that he can keep the viewer's attention, right? So let me read this paragraph from this website, verywellmind.com. And this is what these guys said about the power of red. So this is what they said. In the year 2004, in the Olympics in Athens, we just are in Olympic season now, so this will be interesting. In the 2004 Olympics in Athens, competitors in 4 sports, boxing, Greco-Roman wrestling, freestyle wrestling, and Taekwondo were randomly assigned red or blue clothing. In all 4 competitions, red-clad contestants won more fights. Many think these results are due to the link between red and perceived dominance. For instance, donning a red uniform may cause an athlete to feel dominant and perform more aggressively. Fascinating, isn't it? It's this is above and beyond what their skills or what their capabilities are. Now, while we are on the topic of dominance, let's look at how red creates strong emotions. All right. Okay. These are a few words that that people say that red is associated with. So let's kind of quickly look at this list, but as we look at it, let's keep these emotions in our mind, because all the pictures that we're going to see today in this brief presentation, let's see if we can associate that with any of these terms. So we have love, passion, beauty, desire, life, anger, exertion, strength, rage, danger, violence, warning, sacrifice, celebration, right? So thinking of the whole idea of dominance and anger and rage, here is a picture by fashion photographer Rohan Shrestha. this is the cover for Femina, and we have Ranveer Singh on it. But then here, red is introduced in a very obvious way, right? Now, why do you think, red here is introduced where he's actually holding a piece of red glass, right? What if it were blue glass? If it were blue glass, the text here, the main copy text here, the Ranveer Rain, I don't think the Ranveer Rain text would come out as powerfully and as effectively as it has if he were holding a blue glass, right? So, I mean, here itself we see that, red naturally says a lot of things that we saw in that list, right? Now here we are specifically talking about power and dominance and, the Ranveer Rain, that's the whole copy, right? So what else can we see, right? Okay, now before we go on, I mean, when we look back, this picture has reds, this has oranges and yellows as well. So now, when we talk about color photography, we never isolate one color to the neglect of other colors, right? Because colors all play with each other, play against each other, they help each other, or they hurt the picture, right? So when we look at a theme like a tinge of red, let's remember that it's not just about red, right? When we look at the color wheel, we have the supplementary colors of red. So next to it, we have orange and maroon, but then look at the complementary color. Right opposite to red is green, right? And red and green, these colors together, when they come together, they make for really fascinating pictures. And I'm not just talking about photography. I'm just talking about visuals in general. Think about the Italy flag, red and green, right? I mean, it's always embedded in our minds. And even something simple as, something as cliche as a red flower. I often think that, when we look at a good red flower, it's not just the red flower that is pleasing, but it's also the red flower in the context of the leaves and the foliage around it. So the red and green playing off each other and the red and green helping each other out, right? And how do we see this in pictures? So we have Alex Webb. This is a picture that he shot in Istanbul, right? So we have the child indoors and he has cotton candy. So it kind of shows the whole idea of, innocence and, childhood and stuff. It looks like a nice, peaceful, safe space. But what is that contrasted with? With the world outside. And that's where the red comes in, right? So the red and green really play with each other very well, in my opinion, when we look at this picture. And then we just need to keep this whole idea in mind of complementary colors. And it's a fantastic exercise to watch out for complementary colors, especially red and green in pictures. In fact, a lot of my work had red and green, and I never realized it till about 5-6 years ago, when a friend of mine who's a very prominent sculptor, he told me, "Hey, Abhishek, I see that you use a lot of red and green." And I'm like, "Oh, really? Oh, yeah." I mean, I never noticed it. So it's a good exercise for us to kind of keep that in mind and notice it. All right. Now, it's not just complementary colors. If we look back into the color wheel, if we use complementary colors, red and green, then that creates, that gives a certain emotion and a vibe to the picture. But at the same time, if we use supplementary colors or other colors which match with red, then it can kind of give a different kind of feel to the picture. So this is one picture that I shot again many years ago on a cell phone. Again, if you notice, a lot of these pictures are independent of the equipment. Most of them can be used with a phone or with a DSLR or whatever. So this was shot on a phone. Now here it's not complementary colors. Yeah, it's more like yellow, so it's kind of close to orange, close to the supplementary colors. But here, when yellow comes in or an orange would come in with red, at that point, you can see if you can use it for the other things that red stand for, more like beauty and grace, and so now we're moving away from the whole violence and danger and warning and all those things, right? So here we are looking at more of beauty and grace, right? So okay, so moving a little bit away from the psychology of red, can we use red as composition? So that's something that we can see. Again, how did we start? That the whole red by nature has the ability, or it tends to hold attention or draw attention to itself, which means it can be a fantastic tool for composition, right? Okay, Raghubir Singh, 1994. Again, as I said, let's imagine this without the red, right? in this case, let's imagine this lady without the bindi. I mean, a lot of people take this frame. I take this frame for literally every shoot. I mean, every documentary shoot I need to do, right? But I'm not Raghuveer Singh. And that's what makes my pictures different from his, right? So here the red, you know, on one hand, your eye focuses on the red. It's a very powerful compositional tool. Your eye is not swaying anywhere. But at the same time, because it's a red dot or a red circle, it contrasts and it plays with the other elements of the picture. You know, we have the horizontal with the horizon, even though it's a little tilted, it doesn't matter, it looks great. We also have the horizontal of the rock, right? And even if you look at the clouds, even that is kind of on a straightish line, right? And so we have like line, 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 boom, red dot, right? And if we see, right, I mean, if we draw like an imaginary line right above the bindi, we see that the red play very well with the rocks and the water splashing against the rocks, right? So we have these lines like this, we have the bindi, and draw an imaginary line like this. So, I mean, if we look at this, this is, this doesn't, I mean, this hardly falls under the general rules of composition or the guidelines of composition that we see, right? Maybe rule of thirds, but even then, you know, a little dicey, right? And even though I was thinking, you know, even though the bulk of the picture is blue, the waters dashing against the rock is actually spoken through the red, right? And the red is just a small part of the picture. I mean, when we talk about waters against the rocks, you know, we are talking about conflict, right? And but that is not spoken to the water, that's spoken to something else in the picture. So, I mean, I love this picture. It's really good, right? Okay. What else can we see? Okay. From something very good, so, let's look at something very mediocre, which is my picture now. Something that I shot like 10 years ago. But the reason I put it here is because, I mean, to understand the power of red, we need not just see fantastic pictures by great photographers. Let's look at mediocre pictures that all of us shoot, right? So we have standard picture, child against a door, nothing very fancy, but here red makes a big difference, right? And also if we see, it's not like the red here plays against the blue, correct? So here, let's remember, it's not just about the red, but also how does red stand with other colors, and also how does red stand with texture? See, because you should remember that a color is a color, but you can make or break the picture based on what is the texture and what are the materials that are shown in your picture. So in this case, we have a lot of rugged, rustic, broken walls and this old door, blue, and you're kind of putting red in there. So that's what we have here. And we have red and green. So keep an eye out for the complementary nature of it as well. You know, we have a little bit of green here. All right. Harry Gerd, again, another very prominent Magnum photographer. Here we see the line, which is the escalator graffiti. Your eye is on that diagonal, but at the same time, because the person's helmet is red, you kind of, you know, with the escalator, you look to the arrow lines, but then your eye also comes down to the helmet. You know, red is demanding for attention. So your eye comes on the helmet, and then guess what? Your eye then goes to the top right. We see that yellow and red. I think that's a flag. So we see that as well. So let's think of, you know, how we can use red in composition. Here, it's clearly the diagonal. And guess what? Again, complementary colors also. So sometimes you will see that, you know, to have the picture very effective and, you know, have it remain in the memory of the viewer, a lot of things have to work. So it's not just red. So the idea is not that, hey, a tinge of red, let me now go around hunting for something that is red. I mean, that's not the point. A lot of things have to work together. So all these things, ideally, we should know, we should understand. And when we walk out with the camera or the phone, at that point, we don't think about it. At that point, we let red speak to us, or we let red through composition or through emotion speak to us, and see how do we kind of interpret what we are sensing in a two-dimensional frame. Yeah. So what else can we think of red as, or what other kind of representation can red do for us? Can we think of red as drama Now, when I say drama, it can mean drama or any strong emotion, positive or negative. This is one picture that I shot in Nepal a few years ago, and it's an important picture for me because this was a time when after the assignment we didn't get a ride back, and we were like somewhere deep in the Goonies, and you know, I was at the back of a truck. So the red here is the brake lights of the truck, and for me here, red, again thinking of danger and being alert and warning, and the sense of uncertainty that I felt at that time really showed through. So and especially if for those of you who are looking at red as street photography, if you have red in motion, all the emotions that we spoke about and we put that red in motion, it's almost like the person or the object is carrying those emotions with them, you know, when we are putting them in motion. Yeah, I mean, again, as I speak all these things, it may sound a little abstract, which is fine. We don't need to understand everything. We cannot, for that matter. So think about how you can put red in motion if you're out on the streets or if you're shooting people. This is an obvious picture, but the reason I put it here is because it works, right? Red has power in itself to work even for pictures which you have, or even for kinds of pictures that you've seen before. This is a wedding that I shot many years ago, maybe 13 years ago. Bidai, red. I mean, I don't need to speak more, but then I believe that, you know, what this bride is going through is kind of clearly shown, even though compositionally this is not very good, but then the color kind of holds the picture better than the composition does, right? So so this is one example of red as drama. Okay, now this is one picture that I quite like. This is by my friend Rachel. She's a birth photographer, Instagram Scribble Pad Creations. Here, what is interesting is that, you know, a lot of pictures that we saw, red was directly on the subject. But here, we see red in the background. So when we think of red, it's not that, you know, your main subject or what you focus the camera on has to be red. That's not the point. But here, since she's trying to show a birthing process, let's think about things that red signifies, right? We have love, we have exertion. You know, exertion is one of the things that red signifies. We have sacrifice, we have passion, all these things kind of really coming together. And it's I mean, yeah, so we have red in the background literally. So it's almost like all these emotions in the background literally in this picture, right? So so this is another example where you're using red, and no complementary colors, right? We have red and a little bit of bluish gray sort of a thing. So we have red as drama here. Okay. Now, it's not just, perhaps a lot of the examples that we saw here was negative or alarming emotions that red convey, apart from the picture of that child. So there's one more picture that I want to show, which is an example of red invoking a positive emotion, right? So when we look at this child, we have and her red the ribbon or the clip that she's wearing. Immediately you think of the childhood and innocence, and there's a sense of attraction to it, right? Also, we can consider using red in pictures where we want to show mystery, right? Because red by itself is a very intriguing color. Now, in this picture, we know very little. We don't see her face. In fact, we don't even see the context in which where she's standing. Is she standing in a house? Is this a school? Is this some other place? We don't know. So there's a lot of mystery in it. And red, being an intriguing color, can we use it to kind of to enhance the mystery that we want to convey in this picture, right? Okay. So I wanted to end with a little bit of technical stuff as well. Not too technical, but then a few things that we can keep in mind. Okay, we ought to be very careful. We ought to be very careful when we are looking at the metering when it comes to red, because red tends to overexpose a lot, whether it's the phone or our DSLR or mirrorless cameras. So make sure that your photos are not overexposed. To be on the safe side, slightly underexpose your picture because the red may get blown out. If it's a DSLR, try and shoot raw, or if you have an RGB histogram, use the red channel to see if it's blown out, or if you're shooting on a smartphone, tap to focus and slightly underexposed. That may help. And also pay attention to the lighting. The last picture that I showed, we had the light fall on the girl at an angle. So, I mean, if you look at me, I'm wearing red now and the light is directly in front of me. Now, when the light is falling straight, you don't get the details, right? You don't get the, I mean, it's red, but then you tend to lose out on a lot. But then if the light were at a 45-degree angle or at a nicer angle, you'd get better contrast. You'd appreciate the red better. That's what I would say. So yeah, I think that's it. Yeah.
Thank you so much.